Sometimes we let go of old ways so slowly. I told y'all one of my favorite experiences when I was down at Captain D's was when this old couple walked in, and he was all bent over, and they were very aged, and she was very aged, but she could get around better than him. And he sat down, and she went and got the meal, brought it back to the table, and I'm watching this, and she leaned over to him and said, "Hon, did you check your email today?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And I just wanted to hug them both. I appreciated that. Yesterday, I want you to file this under the heading of accept things for what they really are, folks. I'm sitting in my chair watching television, and I get this little text message. How many in this section know somebody how many of y'all have ever done 1,000 text messages in a month? How many over here have ever known somebody do 1,000 text messages in a month? 2,000. You see how things change? Curiosity, 4,000. Anybody? Wow. Notice I said, how many of you ever known somebody? I let them do the friend thing, parents, and so that they don't have to confess anything. So my son sent me this text message, and he said, "Dad, I'm eating breakfast at Dove Creek Cafe." I know where that is. "Just heard an old guy sitting next to him say Nav and MapQuest is just tech and gimmicks. He said, I have an atlas and a compass, and that's all I need." I wanted to hear him say, "And we like it like that," but he didn't. Instead, I just wrote back, "Ha ha," and then Jeremy texted me back 2 or 3 minutes later, and he said, "His wife just said some guy tried to sell us Wi-Fi, and I think that's just crazy. Somebody can pull up outside your house and wipe out your bank account." And I texted him back, and he sent me back this, and he said, his son, this is a little younger generation, just said, "I don't need no antivirus software. I think I'm smart enough to not be clicking on stuff I'm not supposed to." So then he sent me a picture, click. And he sent me a text mail with a picture of it. And I wrote back and said, "I thought this was all pretty funny till I saw that old guy was about my age." And he was. I like things like I think they're supposed to be. But sometimes it's not like we think it's supposed to be. There's not supposed to be any spyware out there. There's not supposed to be anybody cleaning out bank accounts. I'm not going to say there's not supposed to be any nav equipment. I love that stuff. But if you want to keep on holding to how you think things ought to be instead of how they really are, you're going to have a struggle with life. As a matter of fact, one of the neatest things I ever learned with this, the difference between a crotchety old person, a gripey old person, and a happy old person. Y'all have all known both, haven't you? The difference is that the happy old person is able to change and see things like they really are. And a crotchety old person just keeps wanting to drag everything back to how things used to be, back in the good old days, when there wasn't MapQuest and nav stuff. And all you needed was, and so I laughed and I said, "Jeremy, does he realize that there was a time when a compass was that newfangled equipment?" It's all newfangled. So how are things supposed to be? Folks, they're not always like they're supposed to be, but they are like they are, and your happiness depends on whether or not you can deal with that. I want to tell you about a time when a man that you all know and love, you've never met him, but you know of him, and you love him, and someday you're going to meet him, Peter, was in a situation where things weren't like they were supposed to be, but they were like they were. In Acts chapter 7, after Jesus Christ, the very next person dies who's a Christian, Stephen. Fast forward ahead to chapter 12, and we find, you remember the two disciples of Jesus, James and John? James is put to death. Herod arrests him and kills him with a sword. And the Jews all go, yay, man, that's great. And Herod said, see, he had a problem, historians tell us, with getting the Jews to really like him. So he thinks, I'm going to really please the Jews, and he reached out and arrested Peter. Now, you know what he had in mind for Peter. He's going to kill him. And so Peter finds himself in prison. Look how securely he makes Peter. He guards him with 4 sets of 4 soldiers, rotating around the clock, we assume, 4 at a time. And watch this, one man. He puts 2 soldiers by the door in Acts 12, and he puts 2 soldiers in there, and he shackles Peter to these soldiers. Peter's not going anywhere. Herod is serious about this. He's going to get him some really good time feelings with the Jews when he puts Peter to death. But everything changes. Man proposes and God disposes. God has different plans than Herod had. But the church doesn't know this. The church just knows the one we love, the one who preached that first gospel sermon. Peter is in prison, and James is dead. And you know what they're going to do next? They're going to kill James too. So the church prays. In the middle of the night, Peter's asleep, and an angel appears. Wake up, Peter. Get up. Peter gets up, and the shackles fall off his wrist, and he takes him out. That's our story this morning. And I want to read parts of that to you today and share with you some amazing messages, some principles you can learn for times in your life when you need it. Number 1, and we call this deliverance from the jails that hold you, so I would suggest to you that there are prison experiences for all of us. Look at the text. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for the public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. Now that word there, earnestly praying, means instantly and earnestly. It wasn't like they got together and say, what can we do? Now Peter's in prison. They instantly and earnestly started praying for Peter. Because, no, not just because Peter's in prison, but because James has been put to death. Spend the night in jail, spend a year in jail, spend 5 years in jail, and you eventually get out. But when you're put in jail by a tyrant who's just received a favorable rating among the Jews for killing a Christian, well, what do you think would happen to our politicians if they could get favorable ratings? And you know they track those things. They could get favorable ratings by killing a Christian. How would you feel about being here this morning? Folks, we all have our prisons that we go through. No, not maybe a 6x8 room with bars and iron around it. Maybe no clanging doors, but prisons of fear. If you lock yourself in your house and won't come out, how is that different than a prison? Prisons of doubt. I can't ever do anything. I can't ever accomplish anything. I can never amount to anything. And you wake up someday and you're 80 years old and you realize, no, you never did amount to something because you were always too afraid to try. Prisons of disbelief. Nothing good can happen. This can't work out. It'll be fun tonight when you come together in your life groups and you talk about the different kinds of prisons that you've seen people go through. Because I could parade you up here one at a time and you could all relate to me, as I did with these kids. I said, how many of you know somebody who texts 2,000 texts in a month? You could all tell me somebody you know who's been in some kind of a prison experience. Doubt, fear, unbelief, distrust, anger, pain, hurt. Some kind of prison experience they've had. And to all of those of you who've ever been in one of those, or all of those of you who will be in one of those, I want you to remember the story and realize this. God knows how to deal with prison experiences. God knows how. And we know how he did it. The door opened, the angel came. But what if Peter had just sat there and said, no, this can't be, and wouldn't move? Instead, he obeyed. Number 2. The second great lesson that I want you to see from this is that there are angels among us. Now, the first thing you're going to do is say, well, I don't believe in angels. I do believe in angels. I don't believe in guardian angels. I don't know, that's a harder subject. That's not what I mean by it. But let me read you the text. The night before Herod was to bring Peter to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the door. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and the light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said. And the chains fell off of Peter's wrist. Angels among us. Now, I don't know what you know about angels. The word angel simply means, in the Greek is angelos, that means messenger. It was somebody that was sent by God. These created beings that were sent. You may not know much about them. This past week I read an article where somebody interviewed children and asked them what they knew about angels. And these were the answers. Olive, age 9, said, it's not easy to become an angel. First you die. Yeah. Then you go to heaven. Then there's still the flight training you have to go through. And then you got to agree to wear those angel clothes. Mitchell, 7, said, my guardian angel helps me with math, but he's not much good for science. Henry, 8, said, angels don't eat, but they do drink milk from holy cows. Daniel, 9, said, when an angel gets mad, and I can just see some parent, some grandmother maybe telling this child this. When an angel gets mad, he takes a deep breath and counts to 10. And when he lets out his breath, somewhere there's a tornado. Well, that explains a lot. 3 more. Reagan, 10, said, angels have a lot to do and they keep very busy. If you lose a tooth, an angel comes in through the window and leaves money under your pillow. Then when it gets cold, angels go north for the winter. I think for the summer. And Jared, 8, said, all angels are girls because they got to wear dresses and boys don't go for it. And Vicky, 8, said, what I don't get about angels is why, when someone is in love, they shoot arrows at them. I hope your understanding of angels is better than that. And we're not here to have some great debate about whether or not an angel saves somebody. I have my opinions. I don't believe God works through angels in some miraculous way. But I do want to read a couple of scriptures for you. Listen. Hebrews 13:2, he says, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing some people have entertained angels without knowing it. And then Hebrews 1:14, are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? I confess to you, I don't know what all that means. I don't know how angels are among us, and I don't know how they minister to us. I just know that's what the Scripture says. Even the best Bible scholars only guess. Nobody can nail it down. And you know what? I believe nobody can nail it down because God doesn't want us to nail it down. Here's what I want you to take from this. Not that you have guardian angels. Not that somehow or another what I want you to get is this. God still looks out for you. He does. And if you don't believe that, then I'd like for somebody to explain to me these texts from Hebrews. Or for that matter, from the Sermon on the Mount, ask and it shall be given unto you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. You're not down here on some distant rock, millions and billions of light years away from a God who only sees us through a giant cosmic telescope, saying, oh, I hope it all works out. So, by angels among us, I don't mean some human-looking creatures in white clothes with wings. I just mean that somehow or another, folks, when you find yourself in your prison experience and you have and you will. Understand this. God still works among us. And number 3, not only does he work among us, there is a wow factor in God's work. There's a wow factor. I like that. Don't you love it when something happens, you just go, wow. Listen to this. Peter's in prison, but the church was praying earnestly for him. Verse 5 says, beginning, the night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains. Now, is that pretty secure? I don't know how to get in there and get him out. And sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said, and the chains fell off his wrist. Then the angel said to him, put on your clothes and sandals. I want you to notice something as I'm reading this. All the things that Peter couldn't do for himself, God does. But those things he could do, God expected him to do. God didn't just say, poof, you have clothes and sandals on. He says, you take care of it. He says, Peter, get up. He just didn't, poof, have him standing. God expects you to do what you can, but in those things that you cannot do, God can work in wow ways. And Peter did so. Wrap your cloak around you and follow me. The angel told him. And Peter followed him out of prison, but he had no idea what the angel was doing was really happening. I mean, this is a dream. This can't be. He thought he was seeing a vision. Verse 10 says, they passed the first and second guards, who must have just been snoozing on their watch. Or else Peter and the angel were invisible. I don't know. And they came to an iron gate leading to the city. Uh-oh. How do we get out of an iron gate? It opened for them by itself. It had one of those little eyes in it, you know. And they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, now I know without a doubt that the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and everything the Jewish people were anticipating. God sent him to get me out of here. Now, if you can't see wow in all of that, then you need to read it again. Verse 4 tells us, well, look at all the things. God sends a single angel. He shines a light in the room. And that was before the days of flashlights. He didn't just say he caused a light to be there, but he shines a light. And I have a question for you, by the way. Why did he cause a light to shine in the room? Did the angel need it? Peter did. You see, God doesn't just do the things he needs. Sometimes, folks, he does the things you need. God didn't need it. The angel needed it, but Peter needed the light. And so Peter stands up, and the chains fall off his wrist. Peter didn't have a key. And you're not going to wake the soldier up and say, hey, can I see your key? He tells him to get dressed. He tells him to put on his cloak and follow him. They walk right past the first guard, nothing. They walk right past the second guard, nothing. They came to an iron gate that opened automatically. They walk a block together and the angel just leaves. I got to tell you, that's pretty wow to me. God works in wow ways. And all of this, as we said, he expected Peter to do what he did. Peter walked. He didn't beam him to another place. For those of you who watch science fiction stuff, he didn't automatically dress him. He expected Peter to dress himself. He woke him up. He let Peter do what Peter could do, but everything else God did. Look, whatever prison experience you find yourself in, when God sends help to you, you don't have to sit down and say, no, I just don't know how God can work this out. God can work it out. Look back on your life. Think of all the times God has delivered you from your prison experiences. And you know, you look at it and you say, yeah, I see how that happened. I see what he did. I see how this all worked. But my question to you is, did you see it before it happened? Probably not. Things happened you couldn't even imagine. God worked in wow ways in your life. I want you to remember that. When God comes to help you, he'll work with in wow ways. And then finally, number 4, and then the lesson will be yours. I see in this the push principle. The push. No, not God, I'll push you and you push me back. But Peter was kept in prison, verse 5 says. But the church was earnestly praying to God for him. So when Peter goes in, that word was praying means instantly and earnestly they began to pray. How long was it in there? He was in there till they shackled him with a bunch of people. They put the guards in play. Peter had time to go to sleep. Now, isn't that amazing to you? That Peter could go to sleep chained between two guards, knowing that they just killed James? He can go to sleep. I'd be awake and sniveling, wouldn't you? Oh, God, I don't want this to happen to me. I'd have been praying earnestly, but Peter knows God's in charge of everything. Look, God's in charge of everything. God's in charge of everything. All of this takes place and requires some time. Then we read, at the end of the story, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. So they continued to pray. Let me give you the push principle. Pray until something happens. Pray until something happens. I don't want you to just pray for, would you please pray for me? I'm going to have this surgery. Look, pray until something happens. How long do you pray for something? More than a century ago, an evangelist in England named George Mueller, who didn't have a clear understanding of all the scriptures, but let me tell you what he did understand. He began to pray for a group of 5 personal friends of his. After 5 years, one of them confessed Christ. 5 years. So you pray 5 years. In 10 years, 2 more of them did the same. He prayed on for another 25 years, and the 4th man decided to do the same thing. For the 5th, he prayed until the time of his death, and this friend too followed suit. For the latter friend, Mr. Mueller prayed almost 52 years. So pray for me. What does that mean? Okay, I said a prayer for you. What, took 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds out of my life, out of my prayer? Probably not 20 seconds. I think sometimes when we pray for people, it's kind of like the old boy who went to the reading of the will, and the lawyer read it out, and he said, and to Ron Crouch, whom I promised to remember my will. Hi, Ron. I think sometimes in our prayers for other people, it's just about that simple. Oh, and God bless Liz, too. Instead of really reflecting on what the need is and asking for that need. And then the next day the same, and the next day the same. Don't bug God. Aren't you going to wear God out? Well, Jesus anticipated this, and he tells this story. I'm going to read just part of it in Luke 18. He tells the story of the, let me set it up for you. He tells the story of the widow who comes to the judge, and he says, avenge me of my adversaries. And he, leave me alone. She comes back the next day, avenge me of my adversaries. Leave me alone. She comes back the next day, take care of the people who are trying to hurt me. Leave me alone. And listen, at the end of it, he helps her because she's wearing him out. Well, surely you're not saying that's what we should do with God. Well, listen. And the Lord said, Jesus said, listen to what the unjust says. And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones? That's you. Who cry out to him day and night. Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see them get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? What is the point he's saying? He's saying God's not going to keep putting you off. In other words, that scripture clearly teaches that maybe God won't answer the prayer the first time. Maybe not the second. But he sees how earnest you are in it. And at some point, you can touch his heart. The push principle. Pray until something happens. I love that story. You know how it ended, don't you? Peter goes to the door, knocks on the door. Open the door! It's me! The little servant girl goes, she says, oh, it's Peter, it's Peter. She runs in and tells the people inside, who've been praying now earnestly and instantly and continuously using the push principle for hours. Peter's at the door. They say, you're crazy, woman. Are you crazy? No, it's really him. Well, they said, it may be his angel. But Peter's over there in prison. But they kept praying until something happened. And in the end, they were delivered from their prison experiences. In the end, God had sent an angel. In an end, in a wow way, God delivered them. You need God to help you. I know that. I need him to help me. I need him to help me in wow ways. Sometimes I pray for that. I really do. And more than once, God bless me in ways that are just wonderful, God. I ask for those wow ways. Keep on pushing. Keep on praying until something happens. And then when your prison experiences arise, and you wait patiently, and he did. Don't you call that patient waiting when you can go to sleep between two prisoners? Between two soldiers, chained to them? And God will take care of the rest.
Shoulder up my cross, and take it home to my Jesus, ain't that good news?